Shalom. Kol Holo Yahweh Bashum Yahushua Bashum Rakach Wadash. The minds of the apostles, the minds of the elders. At Great Millstone, who rule well and told men this truth. Much respect to you, brothers out there, just preach this word and truth and sincerity. The rightful because of earth. The tabernacle of David that's being risen up right before your very eyes. The hopeful elect. And the speckled bird. To you, I say shalom. Let's get into this lesson. All right, the other day, as you see with these pictures, right? The other day, I saw the Noah's Ark that they had down here in Kentucky, right? And hey, it was pretty dope. The pictures don't do it justice on how large the ship is. I believe they said they did it by the measurements of what the scripture said. So yeah, very, very huge ship, man. You know, you can imagine, you know, the spirit that the Lord had Noah and the craftsmanship, you know. Hey, that's a wonder within itself. The spirit and the craftsmanship, you know, the hours. And you got to remember, Noah was out there building the ark, right? You can, you know, put yourself in Noah's shoes as we are building up our spiritual ark. You know, you got your family members, your friends calling you crazy. You can only you can only imagine. You can only imagine, you know, the people that will walk across them, you know, see them. Hey, what you building? What you mean it's gonna rain? What you talking about? It's gonna rain? You know, equate that to us on the highways and byways. What you talking about? Judgment is going to come. What you talking about? The Lord's coming to destroy Babylon the Great. Y'all look crazy, man. Y'all got aprons on, blankets on. What you talking about? That Hebrew? What you talking about? You know. So we're pretty much, you know, almost in the same shoes, building up our spiritual ark, man. You know, you know, this time, you know, especially with, you know, the women out of order. You know, you may have, you know, certain brothers may have women that know that they're in the truth, and they be like, man, what you always doing something for the brothers? You always gotta go out. Why can't you stay out here with me? You know what I'm saying? But, you know, that's just our lot to make our call in the election sure. But let's get back to it, right? It was pretty dope, but when you have a true biblical understanding of the scriptures, right? Understanding who are the true Israelites, right? Stuff like this gets on your last nerves. It really irks your nerves, right? Now, you know, hey, you see right here, when you go up into the boat, right? Which I had higher expectations, you know, because I wanted to see more inner workings of the ark, which they show you here and there, which was pretty good, pretty cool, right? But, you know, it's like a museum as well. And they pretty much, let's just say they break down the scriptures wrong. Right, when you see how they depict what they believe, what the scriptures say, right? Because they had Adam and Eve depicted as Edomites. Pretty much everybody in there was depicted as Edomites, or just about an Edomite with a tan. You know, there wasn't no true representation of Jake, right? Matter of fact, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, the pictures that they showed, the sculptures that they showed, right, was of Edomites or Edomites with a tan. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of just irks your nerves. It's like, come on, man. You know? But, hey, the Lord is going to have it to where we're in the kingdom. The Lord is going to show us everything that happened. You know, like me, I want to know, like the inner workings, how were the animals set up. They kind of showed you that within the ark. I just wanted to see a little more, you know. But once you start seeing Jake being represented as a Edomite, or a Edomite with a tan, that stuff gets on your nerves, man. Let me see if I got some more. They did have this correct. Having the dinosaurs, right? That's something that they had correct, right? Which you go into Esau Edom science, they'll really call this a lizard, right? The pterodactyl is really a flying lizard. But anyways, that was pretty dope to see, because with Esau Edom science, right, his pseudoscience, he tries to tell you, these creatures went extinct. These creatures weren't on the ark. You know what I'm saying? Let's see. Let's see if we get some more. Like I said, it was pretty cool. You go into this. I believe this is Noah right here, right? Just Edomites with a tan on them, right? Just Edomites with a tan, right? Which I'm gonna break this down too, Lord, when I get to it. Lord, when I get to it. Faith like Noah. I'll get there real quick. Let me get there real. Matter of fact, Job 9 and verse 24, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? Right? It's the Edomites, right? Right now they're in rulership, and they cover the faces of the judges thereof, right? So even though they try to give, the these statues, they try to say it's Noah. It's an Edomite. It's an Edomite with a tan, or legitimately, as we go up here, it's like it, as we legitimately go up here, right? It's the Edomites, right? I said it was pretty cool going through the ark, but I had higher expectations. Would I go back? Nah. Matter of fact, now that I speak about it, they had a VR section, and that was pretty cool. I guess they gave a little more representation. That was pretty cool. But for the most part, honestly, it was a waste of $70. All right. It was more so for the kids, more so for the experience, but if you ask me, a waste of $70. But you had this right here as well, right? Why is death sin? The punishment for sin, right? Is God cruel, right? Let's read a little bit of this. All right, there's no question that the great deal of evil and suffering in the world, which often leads to people to wondering whether a loving God exists. You see, if you actually understood the scriptures, and if y'all actually took heed and listened to the men of the Lord, you will understand the Lord deals with balance. Love, love, love is in balance. Evil, evil, evil is in balance. So the Lord deals with balance. Proverbs 11:1, a just weight is his delight, but a false balance, just roughly paraphrasing, a false balance is abomination, but a just weight is his delight. Just roughly paraphrasing, right? Let's see. The Bible gives you a correct perspective for understanding why there is so much death and suffering. In the beginning, God created a perfect world and gave man authority over it. Our first parents, Adam and Eve, rejected all that God had offered them and chose to rebel, even though, right? Because really, when you get into it, which you Christians don't understand, all right, Adam, that was Yahushua, right? Isaac, that was Yahushua, right? King Solomon, that was Yahushua. Malak Tazadak, right? That was, if I'm saying it correct, Salaki, brother, correct me in the comment board. I believe it was Malak Tazadak, right? That was Yahushua, right? So when the scriptures say the Lord comes through the volume of the book, hey, the Lord is has been here many times, right? Once again, as Adam, as Isaac, right? Malak, Tazadak, Solomon, right? Yahushua when he was on the scene, when he's coming back, right? Which that is very, very soon, right? In the beginning, God created a perfect world and gave authority over it, gave man authority over it. Our first parents, Adam and Eve, rejected all that God had offered them and chose to rebel, even though they knew the consequences was death. Death, suffering, violence, disease are in the world because what man has done and committed high treason against our holy power, right? And I'll get that too, Yahweh Ratazah, us falling us in these everlasting chains of darkness. That's not talking about angels, which really, when you break down the word angel, it means messenger. The scriptures speak about that in the Apocrypha, right? The prophets, the men of the Lord, right, were known as angels as well, messengers of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, right? Because all the prophets have seen the visions. All the prophets were given, seeing the visions of the end, right? But yeah, let's get that. Let me see. Genesis 2 and verse 16. You may freely eat from every tree of the garden, but you may not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. In that day, if you eat it, you will surely die, right? And a Christian will read that and think it's talking about a fruit, an apple, something of that sort, right? But really, it's talking about the philosophies, right? The serpent, that was a man, that was Esau Edom, right? Given the philosophies of this world, man, of wickedness, man. Let me see if there's any more on this, all right? Why is death the punishment for sin, right? And hey, this is how the Lord set it up. My ways are higher than your ways. My thoughts are higher than your thoughts, right? Death might seem like a harsh consequence for sin, but we fail to understand the wretchedness of sin compared to God's holiness. Like it. God is entirely pure and set apart from evil, right? That's talking about being holy. Holy is being set apart, right? He is perfect justice. He must punish sin. And this is what's coming, right? You Jakes that don't want to take heed, right now we're building up our spiritual ark, right? As Noah did the physical ark. Slack, yeah, I got cut off. But let's get back to it, man. Matter of fact, you got one of the scriptures right here. Romans 6 and verse 23. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of power is eternal life in a Mashiach Yahushua our Lord, right? Our big brother Yahushua dying for us, right? Us receiving this truth, which this is life, and eventually Yahweh desire we of those men, we're going to get beamed up. We're going to get beamed up in them chariots and see the downfall of our enemies, but the wages of sin is death. So, Jake want to be out here playing around, don't want to take heed. Yeah, they about to find out the hard way, man, right? The Lord is a just God, right? Let me see what else it says right here. Was it just for God to judge the whole world? Let's see what it says right here. First, God created all living things, which really, it was our Heavenly Father, Yahweh. His only creation was Yahushua. And then he gave Yahushua, right? Because when you read in the book of Genesis, right, it says God, really, when you go into it, in the blue letter, it's Elohim, right? Gods, right? It's Elohim. So really, the Heavenly Father created his son, and then he gave his son the blueprint, right? Gave his son the blueprint. The angels, the men of the Lord, and Yahweh Razah, we of those men, hey, we helped create it the earth and the universe. You know what I'm saying? That's something dope to think about, man. You know, that is something dope to think about. But yeah, get back to it, right? For God created all living things, which he gives him authority over it. Since he is the one who gave life, he has the right to take life. You see? You see? The Lord is a just power, right? The Lord is the artist, man. Right? Just as, I myself as an artist, I create something, you know, if I don't like it, I'm gonna destroy it. I'm gonna crumble up that paper, man. It's as easy as that, right? Is these people try to put the Lord in a box, right? Saying that he's just all loving, love. It's an imbalance, right? Let's get back to it, right? Second, God is perfect, just, and must judge sin. Third, all have sinned and deserve death and judgment, right? As scriptures speak of, our righteousness is as a filthy rag, right? But Yahweh desire, right? We're gonna remain blameless in the eyes of the Lord, right? The fact that God allows us to live at all demonstrates his abundant mercy. And if that were not enough, he provided the way for a man to be saved from sin and dwell eternally with him through the sacrificial death and resurrection of his son, Yahushua Mashiach, you see? So that's a beautiful thing. Though our Lord didn't want to do it, he knew he had to complete the mission. Just like us right now, right? Building up our spiritual ark, we have to complete the mission. We got to see it through. He that endureth to the end, the same shall be saved, right? Let's see what it says right here. Romans 3 and verse 23. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of power, right? So, you got these cats the other day talking about water baptism. The scriptures speak of, it's not of you, least you boast of yourself, right? It's nothing that you can do to be of the elect. Now, the elect is going to do what the elect is supposed to do, keep the laws, statutes, and commandments to the best of their ability, right? But it was already set up in the heavens, right? Who's going to be the elect and who's going to be the 2/3, So, and with that being said, right, the elect is going to be doing what the elect's supposed to be doing, and Yahweh desire we of those men. Romans 10 and verse 9, if you confess with your mouth Yahweh is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved, right? You got cats not even believing in that, Genesis. We don't worship Yahweh, and now you can see how they conduct themselves, how they maneuvering. Hey, where they at? Where your leaders at? Your leaders left you high and dry, right? Just through, man. Just through. Like I said, it's just Edomites with a 10. But, once again, would I go back? Nah. Wait upon the Lord to give us more insight, the more knowledge of the inner workings of the ark, the animals, how everything was conducted, how it was in the ride, man. Put yourself in Noah's shoes, man. It's out there raining. You never seen rain before. Most of us haven't seen a nuclear bomb go off in person, which that is coming, right? That death by fire, right? Put yourself, once again, put yourself back in Noah's shoes, man. The rocking of the waves, the animals, some of these animals be stinking. You know what I'm saying? Waiting to be on land, man. Hey, that could have been a rough, bumpy ride, man. A lot of people were dying. Probably heard a lot of people die. A lot of animals die, But he had to keep the faith. He had to keep the faith, man. And that's what we're supposed to do, right? They also showed this. Matter of fact, before I even get to that, let's stay on point. Let's see. Where was I at? Let me see. I'm gonna get this right here. 1 Peter 3 and verse 20. Which sometimes we're disobedient when once the long suffering of power waited, and the days of Noah, while the ark was a preparing, within few, that is, 8 souls were saved by water. Right? Here it is. You had billions of people, and only 8 souls were saved. The scriptures speak about that, right? You know, how it go? The world was made for many, but the world to come for few. Just roughly paraphrasing. And what's that? 2 Ezra 8 at the top, right? Speak about earthen vessels. You know, the gold. You know, much dust. You know, the elect is represented of the gold, and everybody else is the extras in the movie, the dust, the dirt. You know. Let's get this right here, 2 Peter 2 and verse 5. And spared not the old world, but saved Noah, the 8th person, a preacher of righteousness, right? He was out there prophesying and building the ark, right? Prophesying and building the ark. You got to imagine, the people's probably calling him crazy. What you building this thing for, man? What you out there doing, man? You looking dumb. You looking stupid, right? What you talking about? Rain is coming. What is this rain? We don't even know what rain. What is this? You know what I'm saying? Equate that to us now. You wearing an apron. What you talking about? All right. A preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly. You see, so the ungodly was destroyed. The ungodly got destroyed, right? Elder Yashawamba went into it. It was a couple months ago or last year about how the righteous, right? They didn't taste of the death of the flood, right? Most of them, right, most of them passed away, right? Which you had Enoch back then. He got beamed up, right? But most of as he was going into the lesson, the righteous passed away, right? And then you had Noah and his family, which he was righteous, right? He didn't taste the death. The elect didn't taste the death of the flood. This was prepared for the ungodly, just like this new death, this death by pain, this death by fire, nuclear missiles. This is being prepared for the ungodly again, right? Let's see. And it reads, just looking in the highlight, AI overview, 2 Peter 2 and verse 5 highlights God's historical judgment on sin while emphasizing his protection of the faithful. You see, emphasizing the protection of the faithful. You stay faithful unto the end, protection is going to be upon you and your household. Yahweh Zawi of those men. It referenced the story of Noah, right? The account of Noah, really, noting that God spared only 8 people, right? And this incoming destruction, the elect is going to be like a drop of water compared to the mass destruction of the ungodly here, right? It's going to be destroyed, and the elect going to be saved, right? Let's see, knowing God spared only 8 people, protecting Noah as a preacher of righteousness. When he brought the flood upon the ancient ungodly world, right? King translations, right? Let me see, context. Peter argues that God will punish the righteous, using the flood as an example to warn against false teachers, right? You got false teachers now, as I went into a little bit earlier. The men of Genesis, even just these Christians in general. All right. Death, hell, and destruction is coming upon them, right? All right. The phrase signifies the 8 total people saved in the ark, right? Amidst a wicked generation, Noah was a faithful messenger of divine judgment, right? In Yahweh Razah, we of the same, a faithful messenger of divine judgment. We telling you what's going to happen, man. And if you ain't building up your spiritual ark, you out here playing around, doing whatever it is, following the ways of the world, you're not going to make it, right? Let's go into the judgment, right? Because we read earlier, they had the quote, just roughly paraphrasing, matter of fact, we'll get it. Was God unrighteous to judge the people, right? Is God cruel? Why is death the punishment for sin? Was it just for God to judge the whole world, right? Let's get back to it down here, right? Ooh, slacky. Excuse me. All right, Psalms 37 and verse 28. For the Lord, Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushua, loveth judgment, you see? Loveth judgment. But check this. Forsaketh not his saints. They are preserved forever, but the seed of the wicked shall be cut off. You see, the Lord loveth judgment. You see, judgment happen every day, right? Judgment happens every day, B, right? But the Lord is not going to forsake his saints. His saints are going to be protected. His saints right now are doing the work of the Lord, doing what they're supposed to do. Does the law save you? No, but the saints, the elect, is going to be still keeping the law to the best of their ability, right? And it says, but the seed of the wicked shall be cut off. Yeah, the seed of the wicked is going to be cut off. Those that don't want to take heed, those that want to do whatever they want to do, right? Want to question the Lord, you're going to be destroyed. Proverbs 28 and verse 5. Evil man understand not judgment, but they that seek the Lord understand all things, you see? Evil men don't understand judgment. That's why they have the question, why the Lord will flood the whole planet? Why would the Lord do this? Why would the Lord do that? They don't understand judgment. But the righteous, the men of the Lord that the Lord has set up, they understand judgment, right? We understand that the Lord's going to kill a lot of people. Psalms 105 and verse 7. He is the Lord, Yahweh, our power. His judgments are in all the earth, you see? Judgment happens every day, B, right? Psalm 76 and verse 8. Thou didst cause judgments to be heard from heaven. The earth feared and was still, right? These people are going to know the name of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua, right? Al-Asijah, right? That evil demon-like power. They're going to see the judgment of the Lord. The Lord ain't playing. They're going to know the power of the Lord, right? Because you got Esau, Edom, trying to prop himself up as the Lord, as righteous, It's like you're not as righteous, but prop himself up as the Lord, and say that the Lord doesn't exist. Well, you about to see the power of the Lord. You doing too much, man. Psalms 89 and verse 14, judgment and justice, it's like your justice and judgment are the habitation of thy throne, you see? The Lord loves justice and judgment, right? Mercy and truth shall go before thy face, you see? And Yahweh Razah, we of those men, the Lord gives us, he has given us his truth. And Yahweh Razah, we will be given that mercy as well. Let's go up here, right? Because when you go through the ark as well, you had, once again, the Christian breakdown of the book of Genesis. They had giants, were there tall men? Absolutely. Were we taller, stronger? In some ways as well, smarter? Absolutely, right? But those giants that they were talking about were men of great renown, men of great name, right? Which we'll get right here, Genesis 6 and verse 4, right? There were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they bare children to them, right? Because a Christian will tell you, oh, these are fallen angels, right? These were fallen. No, the angels are in order. The left-hand side angels, the right-hand side angels are in order. You saying that the angels are out of order, that means the Lord has no dominion, the Lord has no power. That's out of order. The angels are doing what they're supposed to be doing. The angels do not the angels are not, they did not come down and conceive Slakia, lay down with women. That's out of order, right? That's out of order, right? The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown, right? These were men of great name, men of great strength and power, right? The sons of God, right? These were not fallen angels, Nephilim, however they say it, right? Let me get right here. Giant is generally defined as a legendary being, right? We were legendary beings, as I'll get in the scriptures, right? Creature or object of superhuman size. Yeah, we were taller and stronger, right? Strength and power. In broader context, the terms refers to anything or anyone extraordinary importance, you see? Extraordinary importance, scale, or influence, you see? And that's where our people, they had extraordinary importance, scale, and influence, right? Let's get this right here. Jude 1 and verse 5. I will therefore put you in remembrance, though you once knew this, how that the Lord, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed them that believed not, right? Because regeneration, reincarnation, we coming back in our lots, and we once knew this, right? Verse 6. And the angels which kept not their first estate, right? I spoke about this earlier. The men of the Lord were also known as angels, right? Angels, you go into the word angels, messengers, right? We didn't keep our first estate, but left their own habitation. He have reserved an everlasting chains under darkness unto judgment of the great day, right? We're in these everlasting chains of darkness, right? These bodies, right, that meant to go off, that decay. You get to a certain age, you start decaying, you start breaking down, right? You're having issues, problems with this, issues with that, ailments, pains, because we fell from our first estate. But we're going to get that back and more. We're going to have those great, tall, and strong bodies and more, because we're going to have heavenly bodies as well. And we're not going to go off, right? Going to be able to eat, drink, have children, and be righteous. That's coming. Won't have to face or feel any type of ailment, pain, disease, right? That's coming, right? But right now we have to bear our cross, right? This is Psalms 82 and verse 6. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are the children of the Most High. But ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes, right? So yes, we are gods. Great men of great renown, extraordinary influence, power, and strength, right? Let's get it in GNT, right? Ye are gods, I said. All of you are the children of the Most High. But you will die like mortals. Your life will end like any prince, you see? We're gods, but we in these fleshly bodies, We are subject to pain. We're subject to die. Some of us will pass away. Some of us will die for this truth. And matter of fact, a lot of the brothers as well is not going to taste death. But regardless, Yahweh desire we of those men, we see the downfall of our enemy Esau Edom and get those new bodies. And we're going to truly be gods of the earth, right? Let's get this up here because it said faith like Noah, right? Know where I'm going to. Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, right? Now everybody has been given faith, right? In this generation, we haven't seen Yahushua, but we have that faith, right? In this generation, right, we haven't seen the destruction of Babylon the Great, but we have that faith by reading the scriptures that is coming, as we get in verse 6. But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to power must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. You see, the elect is going to be diligently seeking him. The elect is going to be spiritually building up their ark, as we read in verse 7, right? By faith, Noah being warned of God of the things not seen yet, right? The Lord warned him. He believed it, right? And he took heed, right? He started building up that ark. Once again, you can only imagine people calling him crazy, calling him stupid. What you doing, man? You out there for how many years? You still ain't done with that mug, or even when you complete it, what you talking about is raining. It still hasn't rained yet. You know what I'm saying? Right? Move with fear. You see, we move with fear. Have you ever burned yourself? You know? You ever been to cooking? You know? Ever burned yourself? Touch the, or touch the iron or touch something hot? That hurts. So imagine that all over your body. Imagine that happening to your whole household, man. You don't want that to happen to your whole household. You don't want that to happen to your soul. You don't want that to happen to the Akim. So we move by fear. Prepare the ark to the saving of house by which he commanded the world and became heir of righteousness, which is by faith. You see? So yes, we are moved by fear and we believe. And we show that we believe in the Lord by spiritually building up our ark now. Right? So yeah, that's pretty much the point. Matter of fact, yeah, I'll go ahead and read this. This is Genesis. And it reads, and the Lord said unto Noah, come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee I have seen righteousness before me in this generation. Of every clean beast thou shalt take thee by 7, the male and his female, and the beasts that are not clean by 2. Right? So there was more clean beast and the unclean, the animals that you're not supposed to eat, only by 2. So that depiction of just every 2 animals, every 2 sheep, just 2 sheep, that was incorrect. We just read, of clean beasts thou shalt take thee by 7. So it was like 7 of them, right? And the fowls, matter of fact, let's go ahead and get to the point. Verse 6, Noah was 600 years old when the flood of the waters were upon the earth. Noah went in, and his sons and his wife and his wives with him into the ark because of the waters of the flood, of the clean beasts and the beasts that are not clean, and the fowls and everything that creepeth upon the earth. Matter of fact, I meant to read verse 5. And Noah did according unto all that the Lord commanded him. You see? And that's what we doing, Yahweh Ratazah, through the Spirit. Right? And Yahweh Ratazah, the Lord is pleased of our ways. Yahweh Ratazah, at the end, we remain blameless in the eyes of the Lord. Right? So do that, all that the Lord commands you to do. Right? It said Noah was moved by fear. He didn't want to drown. He didn't want to get destroyed, right? Matter of fact, I was watching Apostle Gabar's video about Noah. A brother had posted up. You know, you can only, put yourself in Noah's shoes. The people screaming. The Lord had to seal up the ark, because if he didn't, Noah probably would have opened up the ark. So this is the Lord's movie, man. Y'all had a chance to take heed, and y'all ain't want to take heed. All right. So yeah, Yahweh desires an edifying lesson. Yeah, like I said, it was pretty dope. Here's some parts here and there. I meant to say this earlier. It was a whole bunch of people. You had a whole bunch of Jakes there. You had appear to be Edomites, which I believe through the Spirit, a lot of them were Jakes as well. But then you had through the Spirit, I felt, most definitely some, these were actual Edomites, some that you come across. Because, hey, you be like, excuse me. And they wouldn't even move out the way. It's like, come on, Phil. And then meant to bring this up earlier as well. It's like, man, I don't want to see another person in a wheelchair or in a scooter, I should say. Because you had a whole bunch of them and they didn't even know how to drive it. They were all up in the way, all up in the middle of the aisles and stuff. So that was annoying. I say it was pretty cool, but, I really wanted to see more of the inner workings of the ark, more representation of Jake. Once again, up here, is Christianity is rooted in racism, man. You didn't have a true representation of Jake. It's just a whole bunch of Edomites with tans, But we're going to get that knowledge. We're going to get that understanding. We're going to see the inner workings of the ark and so on and so forth, of our forefathers, what they went through, their trials and tribulations, as something to look forward to, man. Right? But yeah, with that, y'all, desires an edifying lesson. Shalom.